The bottom quarter, I would say, page Lamed, in the line that starts with the word Shepoyalim Begilui. So, we will be discussing now about the Esesphiras Atzilus. They are, even though it's Atzilus, they are in the category of Gluyim, of Sphiras Gluyim, and the motion for that is Koiches HaGluyim Shebenefesh. The actual function of Koiches, which we discussed, I believe, quite extensively. We already started this in here, but we are kind of continuing by repeating again the words. V'yodua, it is known sheyesh koiches hane'alomim benefesh, that there are concealed, pardon me, koiches in the nefesh. Shemehem nimshochim ha'koiches ha'gluyim, from which are drawn the revealed and functioning koiches. Now, this koiches and ne'alomim, we already started discussing yesterday. The important principle to recognize, to hold in mind, the reason we have to hold in mind, even though this should be an obvious reality, but because in this world we lose sight of this. That koiches are real real presences. They have thank you very much. They have an essential reality to it, not merely by satisfying a certain need. This is the union of koiches, and as we pointed out, that the way that reality comes into koiches, even though superficially these koiches are in fact merely reactive, it is due to the fact that the nefesh is connected to the koiches via chokhmah. And chokhmah is a link that correlates the nefesh, the ownership nefesh of the koiches, and there is reality in the koiches. Now going upwards, ultimately, you could say the reason that there is such a link, that there is a possibility of recognizing a fundamental truth in the koiches, is due to the fact that in the nefesh itself there is already that element of koiches. These are called koiches ne'alomim shebenefesh. In simple terms, it means that the nefesh, even at its supreme level, even within the essential element of nefesh, which is an essential reality, essential truth, does not require any functional effort to bring it to completion, to complement. It's complete in and of itself. And I want to kind of put it to a sharp definition. It is not satisfactory, it is not sufficient to say that the nefesh has everything. Has everything, this is already the madrega of chokhmah. The nefesh is at a level where having is insignificant. It is a reality in itself. It's called an etzem. By virtue of its own truth, therefore, everything can emanate from it. But it, for its own sake, it is totally a complete entity, complete presence. And it's not complemented by the fact that it has chokhmah and it has other things. That is not what makes it whole and complete. Because it's an atzmi which is above complement, above construction. In this nefesh, there is the element that's called koches ne'elam. In simple terms, it means that one of the qualities or hidden qualities, one of the meanings of being an atzmi is that it also has the capability of expressing itself. Not that the capability of expressing itself makes it. Just the opposite. Because of the etzem element, therefore it can also express itself. And therefore this is the pshat that there is koches ne'elam shebenefesh. We illustrated the concept yesterday, and I want to refresh that illustration so that we will be able to understand what follows more directly. And what we said to illustrate is that in our world, a real presence, by definition, means something that is built, that is created. As for example, having money is significant only if the money was earned by human effort. Then it is, so to speak, a real presence in the world. And then we said that if the presence of the money, for example, or the wealth that Rebbe gave us as Israel, as a finished product, that gift it definitely is real in the context of the world. Because it inherently has its real mission, so to speak. It doesn't have to be acknowledged by the world. Its essential initial presence is that the Rebbe gave it to us in order to develop it, in order to permeate the world with it. Therefore, that definitely has a real presence. But there, the reality of it is in a level of ne'elam. Like the Pasuk says that this is something which we got without building. We got the houses without building them. And yet they are a real presence in the world, because this is not something that came to us. Here's the point. It's not something that came to us from nowhere. It came to us as a gift from the Beis. Therefore, it carries the full significance of everything that the world can possibly have. So similarly in the nefesh, The nefesh is whole. And as I said before, it's whole beyond having everything. But as such, there is also the koich HaShanah because of its wholeness. Because, like we said, all the way back, who knows how long ago, but in this, definitely in this context, we said that a stone has an etzem, an etzem quality. An etzem, it reminds of an etzem because it is completely into itself. It needs nothing. It doesn't need to do anything in order to be what it is, and so forth. Then we said that this is only an allusion to etzem. It's not an etzem by a long shot. Why? Because an etzem that is not sensitive to itself, does not know what it is, it's not an etzem. There's nothing to it. In other words, being nothing does not make it an etzem. An etzem means being everything or all. A stone, it has the etzem in because it is totally insensitive. Doesn't make it, but it's an allusion to it. So similar meaning, if this is nefesh is an etzem. Yes, it does not need anything from outside, but it has everything. Otherwise, in what way is it an etzem? And therefore, we say that in the nefesh there is koiches, and these koiches are ne'elomim, are concealed. Why? Because they're not there by function, by act. They're there inherently in the nefesh because of the truth of the nefesh itself. Now, the koiches gluyim, we say over here, are nimshach from the koiches ne'elom. And here again, the significance of this is very profound. And we always point out a very simple phenomenon in human life, that we are constantly learning new situations, and we are adapting to new situations. What makes it possible for us to adapt so perfectly, seamlessly, so to speak, with new situations? It is due to the fact that this new situation, or any situation, is already known inherently in the nefesh. And therefore, everything new is just simply fits and just draws and reveals that aspect of the nefesh. Like we said, very simple thing, a car which enables us to travel enormous distances, that distant travel was not created as a result of the presence of the car. If that was so, we couldn't really, without the nefesh, we couldn't really relate to the human. We would feel uncomfortable, we get out of place when we move 100 miles away from where we are. Because to cover 100 miles without a car is virtually an impossibility. And yet, we feel perfectly comfortable. Not 100 miles, 1,000 miles. Why? Because the whole presence of the car was actually the creation of the human spirit that relates to the entire globe. And therefore, that is only, so to speak, the expression, the functional, the gilui of the reality. So the koiches hane'elomim shemehem nimshochem hakoiches hagluyim. Let me put this into what we just now said in koiches format, at the koiches level. in the koyach, at the koyach level, if we want to go from one place of the shul to another place of the shul, we have to walk. And walking means putting one foot in front of the other, one step at a time. That's called walking. And this is how we cover this little gap. What is this whole phenomenon of walking? How does that make sense? I'm here, and then I have to crawl from this place to this place. How do I get that idea? In other words, if the nefesh inherently only knew of one reality, of the place where it is, then what makes me invent walking? The answer is that there's kochas ne'elam. The kochas ne'elamim, the nefesh, so to speak, knows of the possibility of going from one place to another.
So, nefesh knows of going from. The nefesh is sort of in both places at once, no? So so the ne'elam, this movement is kind of, well, why would it have this concept? Why would it have a
That's the pshat that it contains koiches. The nefesh can relate to the concept that from the perspective of koiches, you would have to bridge this gap. So the nefesh itself, yes, it doesn't. But inherent in the nefesh, there is a koiches. Let's continue. HaKoiches ne'elamim shebenefesh. These koiches ne'elamim, this concealed, this inherent koiches in the nefesh, clearly they're of a completely different level. They're not functioning per se. They're part and parcel of the nefesh. Hagam she'einon mishtalshelim zeh mizeh. Although that they are not mishtalsheli, they're not developed and draw and come down one from the other, as is the case of the koiches gluyim, of the revealed and functioning koiches, which has drawn, and they actually develop and devolve one from the other. I want to call your attention to an interesting phenomenon expressed by these two lines. Notice a very simple thing. Everybody's talking about koiches ne'elam, and he's saying a phenomenal thing. How koiches ne'elamim are totally different than koiches hagluyim. Koiches hagluyim are mishtalshel one from the other. The koiches ne'elamim are not mishtalshel one from the other. So the Chayre, if he's introducing a novel principle, novel concept, he should have introduced it as you introduce a novel concept. You should know that such and such is the case. That's not what the Rebbe says. He takes it for granted that you recognize that that it's not mishtalshel one from the other. He is simply alluding to that recognition. He's saying, although this is the fact, and this which you already know as a fact, I'm going to discuss something in reference to. What does this tell us? This tells us that the Rebbe expects us to be alert to what we are saying. Don't just take my words for it. Do you relate to what I'm saying, or you're not? There's no point of talking if you're just hearing my words. introduce koiches ne'elamim. So when you think about koiches ne'elamim, then immediately you're aware of fundamental differences in koiches ne'elamim and koiches agluim. Because koiches ne'elamim are there all the time, all the koiches. Koiches agluim, they come through piecemeal. First there is a decision to go, and then there is a going. For example, so therefore, when we reflect on koiches ne'elamim, we are automatically aware of this principle, and therefore we are going to go into this principle as a given. The koiches ne'elamim shebenefesh. I'm repeating the words so you would see, get into the Maimah the way the Rebbe wants us to be. The koiches ne'elamim shebenefesh, they concealed hagam she'eino mishtalshelim zeh mizeh. Although that they are not mishtalshel, they don't develop one from the other. As is the case of the koiches hagluyim. Just want to keep track of the time. As is the case of the koiches hagluyim, nimshochim umishtalshelim zeh mizeh, where the koiches hagluyim are drawn and they actually devolve, come down one from the other. Like we said before, the Chokhmah initiates the possibility, the whole platform for koiches. And then each koyach, each higher koyach, reveals the possibility and the presence and provides the oineg and the koyach for the koyach, for the lower koyach. Therefore, he's called that Nimshochim, Mishtalshelim, Zeh Mizeh. Although, as we have said in this whole discussion, that the impetus and the oineg, the force behind every koyach, no matter how remote and how lowly it may be, is actually not the nefesh itself. The oineg that's in the lowest koyach is the oineg in the nefesh. But the actualization of the koyach has to be via a process where the higher koyach brings the oineg to the lower koyach. And this is something which is we already discussed in Chochmah and so forth, and the simplest level, most obvious functioning level. In order for me to go from point A to point B, I have to first perceive I want to go from point A to point B. If I don't have any interest in going from point A to point B, I cannot go. What gives the impetus, what gives the chayas in the going is that I know at a much higher level where I'm going and why I'm going. Remember, not long ago we were learning, mentioned the Evet Poshut, which is discussed at great length in Samach Vov. The Evet Poshut, I don't know what I'm referring to. Evet Poshut means the simple Evet that is completely, totally dedicated and submissive to his master. And he does not have his individual delight, so to speak. He delights in that which his master delights. That's the way he describes it. So effectively, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing what he was told to do. So we were discussing and pointing out that yet still in a very, very significant manner. Level. There is a big difference between this Evet Pashut and Lahabdil a horse. If a horse is pulling a wagon, the horse, as far as he's concerned, he can go in circles or going someplace from point A. It doesn't make any difference. He's not at all conscious or encouraged and inspired by the fact that he is bringing his master from here to here. Whereas the Abbot Pashut, yes, he's submissive totally, but he's totally aware of what he's doing. Like I said, if an Abbot Pashut was building a palace for the king, and building a palace involves all kinds of different activities, including putting brick on top of brick. Is he aware that he's building a palace, or is he aware only that he's putting brick on top of the other? So we're saying, as an Eved Pashut, he is definitely aware that he's building a palace. This is the pshat that the koiches hagluim are mishtal shel zeh mizeh. B'hainu, which means, since that the koiches are mishtal shel zeh mizeh, which means she'eino nimsho bohem ha'oir meyatzem ha'nefesh, that the oil, you could say the inspiration, the impetus, the oineg, as we discussed till now, is not brought into the koiches me'etzem ha'nefesh, from the essence of the nefesh directly. Ki'im, rather, alidei kol koyach mekabel oil v'chayz ha'nefesh me'akoyach shelamayla mimenu. I think that there is a sheen missing in this kol koyach. Alidei she kol koyach mekabel oil v'chayz ha'nefesh me'akoyach shelamayla mimenu. By the fact that each koyach receives a chayir v'chayz nefesh, which means it is connected to nefesh, but it's connected to nefesh through the link of a higher koyach, and that enables it to do its thing, because therefore it has the connection to the nefesh. Ubiklal uskulam hu, and then all-encompassing, and the first source that brings the nefesh into the koichos level, hu me'akeach ha'chochma ha'koil kul. It is from the koyach ha'chochma that includes koil kulam, that includes all the koichos. And therefore, as we discussed, the whole Ayin, that koyach ha'chochma, because it's koil kulam, it includes all the koiches. And we explained the significance of the Ayin, that koil kulam. Koil kulam has a dual message. One is that we explained that the whole concept that includes all of them has everything. Everything is possible only because it senses the truth of the nefesh itself. Everything cannot be obtained by accumulation. You can't accumulate everything. You can have everything if you are everything. Koyach HaChochma has everything. Why? Because it is related to that which is everything. That's on the other money. And then on the other side is, because it has koil kulam, therefore it can actually bring chayes to all the koyachs. Any koyach that awakens, that needs to be used, immediately finds its place in the koyach hachoch. And this is how there is the chayes in everything. Okay, now, and here's where we are going to take a break. Menachem till tomorrow.
I'm not sure I caught the answer with how it would be that koyches ne'elam would be koych of movement.
Koyches
Of movement, say. But we said by the neshama he's in every place.
I explained
So
that
I don't get
mitzad etzim. In other words, the neshama perceives, doesn't have to move, perceives the entire existence as one entity. Is it recognizing that there is that it also includes the entire existence?
What is it? What is it?
Does it recognize that there is the entire existence included in that point? Or does it know only the point? In other words, is it just a rock? Or is it a rock that's permeated with full significance of life?
I think the nefesh is beyond a point or a plane. It sees everything.
Yeah. So this everything, is the nefesh aware of this everything? The nefesh aware of what it is.
Why not?
So that's a koyach ne'elam.
But how's that koyach ne'elam of movement per se? We have the power of movement. So how's there koyach ne'elam of movement?
Because movement is a derivative of all the space.
So now the nefesh is saying, if I was in a situation where I couldn't be everywhere, I'd need this koyach. It doesn't need the koyach. It doesn't have concept of koyach.
Whatever the nefesh needs to accomplish, it creates that ability.
So it's as if it's saying, if I was in a guf, then I would need that
The
koyach.
a koyach is not, look, we walk, right? You would say there's no such thing as walking. You just move one foot in front of the other. So we say, no, the koyach is, there's a koyach hahiluch, and the koyach hahiluch is established in the feet. The difference between a robot walking and a human being walking is a phenomenal difference. There's a koyach called walking, and practically speaking, it actually functions via inspiring the feet to move one in front of the other in a controlled manner.
Koyach HaHiluk is also Ne'elam, also has its partner up above. I don't get what that would be. How that would be and what that would be.
Movement in a controlled manner.
But how does the nefesh come to movement at all? It's beyond the inyan of movement.
No, the nefesh doesn't move, but the nefesh recognizes can provide the koyach for movement. If needed. The nefesh is mislabish in the guf. It can reflect itself in the guf by making the guf able to walk.
Okay.
All right, this is it. Have a good day.
The introductory phrase, the Klaus Kula, the first one. What's the translation of this? The Klaus Kula
in the overall inclusiveness of all of the koyches. In other words, the klolos, where are they all together originating? This is Mekoyach HaChol.